Alright, and welcome back to Spray Paint Art by Robert Stevens. Today's painting will be an old barn in the woods. Alright, and first we're going to start off with quite a little bit of white here. We want it to mix with all the other colors. Circle that with some orange, and I'm going to get our smoke gray color here. We're going to put on the outsides of those colors. Then a little bit in the middle, and we'll take our hand and we're going to swirl these colors around, getting them to mix and bring out from the outside and bring some more to the inside. We're going to get all these colors to mix together. I'm going to swirl them around. I'm going to get them to blend. Then you start swirling around, like making like little cloud shapes in the sky. And then once all these colors start to blend together all nicely, and then we're going to wipe across. And then we're going to take a little bit more white here. We're going to blast the middle of it and swirl that around and get a little bit brighter middle. Next, we're going to take our little paint dish. We got some orange and a little white. We're going to make our distant bushes just a little on the bright side because they're going to be super far. We're not going to see a lot of shadow in them. So I'm going to take a little bit more white. That orange was a little bit too dark, so brighten it up a little bit. I'm going to test it off to the side to see if that's what I want, and that's perfect. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to put my distant bushes and just start filling in where I want the farthest bushes to be. Alright, I'm going to take some of the Kona brown, it's just a really dark brown, and some orange. We're going to darken up and make a new layer that'll be just slightly closer. And every time you do this and you want to make a new layer of bushing and you want to create a little distance, just make them a little darker and your layers will stand out, and it'll give you the effect of you have a bunch of different layers of different kinds of bushes, and it just goes farther and farther back. Here I've added more of that dark brown to my color mixture. I'm just keeping the same basic color mixture for all these bushes. I'm just adding more dark brown every time I do this. Now I took my dark brown and basically made my horizon line. You don't have to do this, but it just kind of helps me out to figure out where everything's really going to be. But you can also use it to help make your darker bushes, especially where you're going to have your dark bushes, like that spray right there. Just give me a little dark paint just to put on the canvas there. Alright, and once we're done with the bushes, I'm just filling in color right here below this area. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect, just basically getting the rest of the paint out of my sponge. Alright, so now we're going to take our dark brown and orange. We're going to take a folded piece of scrap poster board. We're going to put some brown and orange in it and let them kind of mix together a little bit. And then we're going to go in here and put some distant tree shapes in the background on this right hand side here. Alright, put a little stick right there and go in here and give it another arm. And if you find that the paint's not running very well. You can always spray a little more in. And be sure to kind of shake it off to the side, as I didn't on that one. And a little bit too much paint came out, but it's okay because I can still work with it. And another branch there. And just basically when you're doing this, don't draw too straight. Try to get the branches to zigzag a little. And then where the like little zigzags are, you just pull another branch off of where they bend, and it'll give them a more realistic like look and feel to them in the background. And pretty much just really don't want to make like just straight boring branches hanging off your trees. Alright, next we're going to take our dish and put a little orange and yellow. I'm going to mix these together a little bit, orange first and then yellow. We're going to take that same dirty sponge we were using to put our background bushes down. So it's going to have the same colors in it. And we're going to get a nice, a little bit brighter color than we had for just that dark shade there, just so they barely show. We're going to put just a few highlights on these little trees over here. And then take a little more. We're going to just a few more like darker spots here and there. Don't overdo it. We want a whole lot of different brights and darknesses coming through, and it's really going to give effect of distance when you do this with your bushing. Then you'll really see it when you start putting the darker bushes in front, and it really gives that effect with the darker contrasts of shadows and the highlights on those. It just really dulls out the background and it gives you a nice cool effect. So now we're going to take our dark brown and some black. We're going to fill in this bottom down here and just get rid of all this white space. We want it to be dark, so I'm going to take Kona brown again in the dish, and then we're going to come back with our black, and then mix those together with the colors that are really just already on that palette that had the oranges and yellows on it. Then we're going to start filling in our shadow bushes for starting a new layer of distance here. And this area over here, some of it needs to be put in, a whole lot doesn't. I forgot when I was painting that I'm actually going to put a barn over where I'm putting some of these bushes, so a lot of them are going to get covered, but it's good practice really to do it anyway, and also it really gives it more of an effect of stuff's really back there, to actually put it there and then to cover it up and work in real layers. And it might be a little time consuming sometimes, but I think it makes for just a really good painting and more realistic, and gives it a really good feel, and you can actually see all the bushes that were actually put behind the stuff. So we went back in here with some darker bushes, as you see, and then this whole dark bush on the left side I actually cover up. So down here I'm taking all that color that's on the sponge and I'm mixing it with that wet black and brown paint on the bottom, and basically making land shapes and little hills on both sides that are going to point down to the middle of this painting. And it's going to look kind of like a riverbed, I guess, a dry riverbed at first, but we're going to put a pathway for our barn here. And that flat spot right up there on the left is where our barn's going to set. And right here, we're just finishing up our land. So actually we know where our land's going to be. It's not going to be exact, but when we do this, you're going to see that it leaves all these highlights and shadows already. And when you get that, you can work with that and it just naturally gives you this awesome, just like flow of land. And so you can go back over with bushes and more highlights and really fill that in and make it look like there's maybe a cliff edge or whatnot. So now we go in with some white, green, orange, yellow, and some lime green. We're going to take our white, we're going to brighten it up with this, or brighten the green up with that white, a little yellow and that lime green, and some orange to dull it down a little bit. And I'm going to test it off to the side and see if that color worked, and it didn't. You will see it showed up just a little too bright. So I'm going to put some more orange in and mix it, and that's really what we're going for right there. We're going to just dull this down and see that color change. And it still has the greens in there. We would just dulled them down with that orange. And that's what the color that I wanted for that bush. And so we're going to take a little more of that same color, this one right there, and take a little more, just a little bit of highlight, a little bit. Now we're going to go back in and fill in some of these lower bushes and a little more orange on these. You don't have to do them the same color. It's just my color preference for this layout. You can change yours up, just dull the colors down a little bit for your background. Grays work a little bit. The oranges really work well with the greens. Grays would probably work very well with like purples for your backgrounds. Clear coat will also thin out some colors. You can dull your colors down that way. Here I'm just basically making a little top area for where there's going to be like some like grassy underbush just right under this area, and I had a little too much paint, so you can see me squeeze it off right there, but I still have plenty of color in there, so I can go back in and add a little bit more color into here, soften it up a little bit. And once we get further along here in the video, I actually get a shot of how my sponge is angled and before I do the rest of the grass area. Because the whole thing is basically going to be some little grassy hills flowing into the middle, and once we get past the barn, it's not going to be a whole lot of bushes, it's just grass. So I will show you that in 1 second. You can just put bushes off to this side if you want up here and wait for that. And wait for the explanation here in a little bit. But here I'm going to just add a little highlights and just kind of some overhang for that little hilltop right there. And now I'm going to take my black sponge and going to fill it with black. And I'm going to put the shape, the shadow silhouette of a barn here. Just a nice basic shape of what it's going to be. Alright, now we're going to fill in our barn. We're going to just wipe straight down and fill in a basic wall. And then at an angle from starting from the top to the side, or you can go from the side to the top. Just put in a basic roof shape and then one swipe to the other side and then fill in the rest. And then I want this to go a little bit farther, so I'm going to extend the roof out at an angle completely to the edge of the paper. So what we'll do is take that same roof angle shape that you started with and then wipe straight to the side, down and over, down and over, down and over, and just keep filling that in. And then you have an extended barn, and then just fill in the rest of the wall. And now we have a basic barn shape. And now we're going to go in with our highlights and make the wood color. So we're going to take some dark brown orange, a little bit of white, and some yellow. And we're going to get these colors to mix together. I'm going to make a few different highlight colors just for different wood tones, different weathered boards and whatnot. And so we're going to take most of that brown, orange, and yellow over there. We're going to mix some of that together. And I took some of that dark brown and mixed it with some white. And I'm going to take some of that middle color and just take all of it and just kind of make a different color. So we're going to have a bunch of shades of almost the same colors here. So we're going to basically do the same thing that we do when we make mountains, except we're just going from top to bottom. Or you can go from the bottom to the top, however you prefer. But we're going up and down. And just put in basically like you're putting snow on a mountain. And when you mix colors like this and you're making it for like your mountains or like wood color like this, and you're just going to spread it on with your palette knife. Even when I do like cliffs, I like to keep my paint marbled, which means so it's like when the paint mixes together, you still see swirls in the paint mixture of all the different colors that you mixed. So you want that paint mixture because it'll really work for you, and it's really good effect when you put it on your painting. And here, just finishing up some little spots that we missed. Alright, so now we're almost done with this wall. And we can go up and start on the roof. And it's the same basic idea, except we're going to go in the same angle that we put on our shadow color with. And for the roof color, I chose more of an orange side to the color that I was using for the walls. But same color palette, just more on the orange and I guess dark brown side, mixed with just a little white to highlight it down. But you can see the brown right there. There was a little bit more brown than orange in that swipe, but that's okay. So we want our colors to not be the exact same. We want color variations, highlights, and shadows. And now I'm putting a little line right here. So I'm basically just putting a little separator of where my basic line's going to be for where this roof separates. So we're going to finish off this part of the roof. And then you can actually see in the black, there's little stripes going at a different angle. And so we're going to follow those angles when we do the second part of the roof to give it that separation. And so there we are. You can see the different angle. And it's going to give us that separator. Alright, once we're done with the walls and the roof, we're going to go in here and use our black sponge and wipe in a door, and then go in with the palette knife and put the highlights around the edge. Just a little bit more there. And then we're going to go in and clean up the bottom of the barn where it meets the ground, and put in some dark bush shapes that we're going to highlight here in a moment. But we just want to give a nice little separator of that barn from the ground here. So we're going to just put some bushes in there and make it nice and clean. And then we'll put some over here, just right on top of this little grass area that we made earlier. No need to cover the whole thing. We're just getting right here in front. Just darken up a little areas here and there. We're going to give some separators from these background areas, and this dark value is a really good way of doing that. Alright, so here's that sponge I was talking about. And this is the one we're going to use for our grass, and I want that edge to be a little bit better, so I want to rip this off at more of an angle so that I've got more flat part to work with here. And then I want that tip just to be the highlighter in all of this grass that we're doing. So I'm going to take some dark green and some black, and we're going to let these colors run together. And I'm going to let them run together, and it evaporates some of that solvent that's in it a little bit. It's going to make the paint a little bit better to work with. And now that I've got all that in my sponge, I'm going to go into my highlight colors and get a little bit of this yellow. And I want this just on the tip of the sponge, and I want that color to be my highlighter. So we're going to go in here. I'm going to show you right here at the edge that here's how the tip works. It makes those straight lines. What we want to put through here is we want a whole lot of grass, so we're going to use the flat part of that sponge, and when we push down, we're going to, you can see it kind of smear a little bit when I push down, so you want to like push down but kind of drag it as you're doing that, and I'm widening out my angles as you can see how the paint's getting put on the canvas there. And that's a good thing, because now I'm going to go back in with my highlight color, and now I'm going to go and I'm going to follow the actual lay of that land there, and with the different angle on my sponge, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to push and drag, and it's going to take the other paint that we put down with the new paint, and it's going to smear them together. And then it makes a nice little soft looking grassy area. I'm going to take a little white. You don't have to, but it just kind of brightens up a little bit. Just bring it right here in this little spot. Just maybe the sun just hit it right there. And now I'm going to go in with some yellow and make like a different angle. Like maybe there's a little bump on that part of the hill right there. Off to the other side, we're going to fill in these bushes that we put under the barn with a little bit of green, orange, and just a little bit of the yellow for the highlight. And then we're going to start putting some grassy areas on this side. And basically the same way we did on the other side, we're going to use that flat part of that angled sponge and put those in. And the more times you hit down in the same spot with that flat part of the sponge, it's going to really soften up the little bush grassy shape that you put. This spot right here, this part of the sponge, not this part, but this part right here, this flat spot that we ripped apart, makes a really nice soft, it won't focus. There we go. Alright, so it makes really nice soft grassy areas, as you can see right here, and over here, and right here, and over there. Okay, so now we will take some yellow and some orange and green into our dish here. Yellow, orange, green, and go with our orange and some green. We're going to dole them up and the highlight. And then we're going to go down here, test it out, it looks good, and start filling in this little area. And over here on the left, where we didn't finish the little grassy area, and then we're going to go into our highlight color. I'm going to go and highlight some little higher spots in these little grassy hills right here in front, and then move on to our same color palette that we used for the barn. We're going to make the pathway from the barn to the bottom of the page. And we're going to use a palette knife. We're going to mix together a little dark brown, a little bit of orange. And that's going to be our base color for this. And so we're going to put this down. And you can go side to side. Make like little swooping motions, as you can see right there. It's not like perfectly straight how I'm putting this on. Not perfectly straight side to side. You can, but I choosing not to. I want my path to kind of have a little dip into it. So I'm gonna a little side to side sway with my palette knife here as I'm adding color. And I can also go in with my fingers, as you can see, and kind of blend some of these colors together. I'm going to go in with a little bit of highlight colors here and there. Like maybe there's some like big stones or some lights hitting parts of the path. There's different colored dirts. So we're just going to do the same thing. It's almost like we're putting on snow on the mountains again. So now we're going to go in and we're going to clean up the edge of this path with just a little bit more of this little grassy area. And we're going to bring it down from both sides and kind of blend it into the paint that we put on. Add a little bit more paint, so we can go to this other side and add some little bush shapes where it meets the pathway here. And kind of fill in some highlights that we missed on this side if we want. And this painting is getting close to being done. Alright, so now I'm going to go up here. I'm going to add just a few little sticks, kind of like a little tree here. I didn't scratch a whole lot of things into this one, and you certainly can if you want to. If you feel you want some more little sticks and twigs, little rocks on your pathway or something, you can certainly just scratch those in. I just chose not to for this painting. Hopefully this will help you guys with some color values, dulling your colors down if you want a little bit of distance. Hopefully you learn how to make a barn, and I'm just adding just a few little finishing touches into my trees up here, just a little bit more color value for everything, and just giving everything just a little bit more of distance and color feel. And I missed a spot right there, but now it's finished. And we're gonna go in here actually with my my cheapo black that I get from Walmart. It's really cheap cans of black. Just be really careful. And these areas that I pointed out, I'm gonna hit with black. You can see this bush right here. The right side of it's about to get hit with the black, and it keeps the left side of it, I'm keeping highlighted, and so it's gonna really give that back part of it a little more shadow. And then these parts over here that are behind the barn, I want to hit with just a little bit more shadow here, and this is a really good effect for making that happen in some areas. Just be careful you don't hit your picture too hard directly in one spot, because this paint does have a lot of solvent and it will make your paint bleed. So on that note, just be careful with the cheap colors, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time, guys.